Welcome back to BRStv. I'm Jason, and today we're joined by a fellow member of the BRStv community, Brian. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I've been reefing since about 1998, following BRS and BRStv pretty much the whole time since they started out. So it's a little surreal for me to sit here with you guys and be part of the videos. I'm just really excited to get started.
Definitely. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. We got
Thanks.
a lot of wisdom behind the desk today, and we're going to talk about top 5 mistakes setting up your auto top-off. First mistake, something often overlooked, is proper sensor placement. Brian, I'm going to let you take this one.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple one, but does often cause a lot of problems. You just want to make sure you get your sensor in the right spot. If it's an optical sensor, make sure it's someplace where it's not going to be getting a lot of water movement. Get some false triggers there. Best place, last compartment of your sump, where you're going to see that water changing most frequently. If you are using a mechanical lever, you just want to make sure that it's out of the way of everything that could hit it. Just make sure it stays nice and clean.
Sure. Yeah, so this is a really good point. If you're not sure where to put it, look for where the evaporation occurs. Now you know. Mistake number 2, picking the wrong reservoir. You don't want to go too large. You don't want to go too small where it doesn't last, say, the length of your vacation, which for me is the whole point of having an auto top-off. Brian, give us some tips.
Sure, I think this one isn't very intuitive. I know I've made the mistake before. Get one too big. You think bigger's better, it's gonna last longer, but then the water starts to go bad. You start to get algae and everything else growing in there. So just make sure you're picking the right size reservoir or container for your aquarium. Make sure it keeps up with evaporation. Like Jason said, if you're gonna be gone for a long period of time, it's not too big that the water starts to spoil. You want something to help with that, you want something to have a lid on it so you don't get a lot of dust and other things in there from your house that are floating around, so things like that. Don't want to use the old bucket from the garage, though a 5-gallon bucket is a great choice on a budget. I've used a lot of $5 buckets in my reefing hobby life. So
old salt buckets.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, back in 1998, I was a college student. So yeah, whatever worked.
Whatever fits in the stand.
That's right.
Now there's also newer options today. Things like Innovative Marine, which has the pull-out drawer, making it easy to fill. Love those.
Yeah.
There's also reservoirs like Red Sea, for example, has a reservoir that will monitor the water level in your reservoir, so you have a redundancy backup.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Because out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yep.
The amount of times I've heard my auto top-off pump run dry, anything to prevent that, I'll take.
Right, and to that, a key point there too is that you can't neglect maintenance, which brings us to our next mistake. And so mistake number 3 is neglecting maintenance. This is a big one. And it's not something that you think about a lot because it's out of sight, out of mind. It's just doing its thing. But what kind of tips do you have for this one, Jason?
Yeah, definitely. So this is one that's near and dear to my heart. If you've seen videos of me, you know I don't like testing. I don't like maintenance. And this is something that you really can't go without. So a really important one, right, is a lot of the options that we use are optical sensors. This is in your tank, right? You clean your glass, there's a film that's gonna grow on everything in your tank. You wanna make sure to wipe down the sensor periodically. It's not something you have to do often, maybe monthly, just to make sure proper function of your auto top-off. But that's, I would say, probably the biggest key to maintaining consistent, reliable performance from your auto top-off is make sure the sensor is clean.
Absolutely, and especially, again, if it's a mechanical one,
even
right?
more
You
important.
get a lot of salt creep on those things. Make sure that they're working right, because it doesn't take much to stop those little floats from going and doing what they're supposed to do.
Agreed.
But then to add to that too, if you are using something like Kalkwasser in your auto top-off, you want to make sure that you're cleaning the equipment as well. It's, the pump itself is going to need to be cleaned, the tubing, make sure that it's not getting brittle and clogged up. So just keeping an eye on everything. Just because it's doing its thing and it's out of sight, out of mind doesn't mean you can forget about it.
A very often overlooked point, if you're running calc, is the tubing. The tubing will dry out, get brittle, could even crack. And the last thing you want to do is auto top off your home, not your tank.
That's right.
Mistake number 4 is going to be proper pump placement. We have a couple examples. Brian, show us the right way to do it.
Yeah, again, pretty simple one. You just want to make sure that you've got it in the right spot in the reservoir. So that, easy enough. Put it at the bottom so that it's not sucking any air. If you're using fresh water, this makes it really simple. I like these sump style pumps, so they draw in water from the bottom, right? So you'll get that lowest level in there before it starts actually causing a problem. Now,
Very good point.
Yeah. So now if you're using something like Kalkwasser, you want to make sure that you have got your pump raised off the bottom of the reservoir, because you don't want to suck up any of that slurry. And again, so then you've got that balance. You've got to make sure that the water level never gets lower than that. It's just again, just setting it up, fine tuning it, making sure you're paying attention to it.
Very good.
All right, mistake number 5 is not keeping your return line out of the aquarium water. Again, seems like a pretty simple one, but it can actually have some pretty negative side effects.
Indeed, yeah. So we set this one up wrong purposely. So what you could run into here is while you're topping off your tank, or maybe your skimmer goes out and the water level rises beyond what it normally would with your top off, you have the potential to back siphon from this line. So we're just gonna fix it here and prevent any chance of this line making contact with the water level in your sump. So make sure, similar to this, or you have a good buffer between your potential worst case water line in your sump if multiple equipment dies, to prevent back siphoning into your reservoir, which then in turn, as we mentioned earlier, will be topping off your home.
That's right. And it could just spoil the water too. I mean, that microorganisms can travel up through that tube as well. And so the easy ways to fix it, keep the line out of the water. You can also put a check valve or a siphon brake on it, and that'll keep that water from flowing back in.
Mistake number 6, using salt water and or dirty water in your reservoir. Brian, give us some tips.
Yeah, absolutely. So using salt water, first off, that's a bad idea. For those folks new to the hobby, only the water evaporates, salt stays behind. So you want to make sure you're always using only fresh water, but it is actually a common mistake. So it's good that we cover it here. If you have a good RODI unit, make sure that you're upkeeping that equipment the way it needs to be. Change those filters out regularly, make sure that they're not dirty. Check the water quality. There are places you can send your water and have it tested to make sure that there's no pollutants in it, that none of the heavy metals, things like that are still in there. So all good things. Another really easy one, just make sure your reservoir stays clean. If you've got stuff growing on the inside of it, or it's been a while since you've just taken it apart and maybe given it a good wipe down, might need to address it.
Very good point. This is an extension of your system. Use water that you would use for a water change. If you wouldn't use it for a water change, don't put it in your auto top off.
Absolutely. All right, that brings us to mistake number 7, putting an auto top off sensor in your display tank.
Indeed. So what you're gonna run into here is you have surface agitation in your display tank, and that's gonna mess up these sensors. Doesn't matter which one.
For sure.
So they make options like this for any of you out there without a sump, which is a sumpless auto top off that maintains the sensor inside this box and is not affected by ripples in your water in your display tank.
It's a really great solution.